You know every time we speak, it's no apologies. This is Wicklow Healthcare Advisory, presenting industry insiders, brought by Bill Murray. He help you in a real hurry. From ownership to healthcare, he an advocate, teaching you how to buy and sell practices. From CPAs to attorneys, all guests, here to help you with your goals. You never know who's on next. This is Wicklow Healthcare Advisory. Let's go!
Let's go! Welcome, everybody. Industry Insiders, episode 4. We are continuing to bring you the cream of the crop in the healthcare industry to help you, the healthcare practice owner, establish, scale, grow, and then exit your business. And if you're noticing the theme here, as I mentioned on our last episode, we're bringing you people and companies that can truly help you in whatever stage of ownership life you are in. And today, I'm very excited to have someone on that really helps dentists establish. So this is geared, if you're an associate, if you are thinking about the new build, thinking about the brand, thinking about establishing yourself and entering into ownership through the development of a brand new practice, then do we have someone on the line today that can really help you with that. So with that, we have Stephen Trutter, CEO of Ideal Practices, a consulting firm that has been around for a while. He's very well known in the industry. Stephen, come on in. We're happy to have you here today. Welcome to Industry Insiders.
Industry Insiders. Hey, Bill, what's going on? It's great to be here. Thanks for having me on, and I can't wait to share some experiences and for those that are associate dentists to give them some really great information if they're looking to make that leap into practice ownership. So great to be here and to be considered cream of the crop. I don't know if I am, but I appreciate it.
I like to use as many cliches as possible during all of my podcasts to keep it fun.
That's right.
So listen, Stephen, we've known each other for a long time, and we got a lot of history.
Right.
The Bank of America history, and then you moved into the consulting field years ago. I'd love for you to tell our listeners today a little bit about your story, your background, and then how did the Ideal idea come to fruition for you?
Yeah. So for those, Bill and I, you and I have known each other for 2 decades now, nearly 2 decades. Worked together, worked for you as well. So we've known each other for a long time. So my jump and leap into the dental industry started almost 20 years ago when I got into the funding side of things. So the funny thing is if anybody's ever read my book, The Startup Dentist, I talk about the fact that I have a degree in biology. I don't know the first thing about dentistry in terms of clinical dentistry. I just figured out what number 15 was. For those that are listening, like number 15 or number 15 tooth is because I have a crown on it, my first crown ever. So I don't even know the numbers of teeth. But I've been a part of nearly 1,000 startup practices in my career, and my path was in, from a funding side of things. And then a little bit over 10 years ago, I met my former partner, Jamie Amos. Many people know his name as well, and he had this idea, which was Ideal Practices. And I remember having a couple meetings with him, and I'm like, okay, he's got the start, but how do we scale this business? And what we saw was there was this gap that existed with true guidance of associate dentists that were making it leap into startup practices. And that was my niche at the bank. And what I had found in the last few years at my tenure from a lending perspective was simply doctors were coming and approaching me going, okay, cool. Now, what do I do next? What do I do next? There wasn't a path. There wasn't a plan. There wasn't a system for startups. There's a lot of people that could say, hey, I can do this part, but no one really put it together and said, how do we have a team that can actually have experts at every single phase to guide an associate dentist of avoiding some big mistakes, avoiding the typical DIY pitfalls, and really to have those experts that are experts at those stages of that process, giving unbiased support with a ton of experience. And that's where Ideal Practices came from. It was more about initially was the idea of like a system for a startup, but then it obviously has evolved into a team of people that are experts. They're saying that they know this part, these stages of a startup to give that kind of guidance with decades of experience.
That's what I love about your business, because I had that similar experience from the lending. It seemed like when we worked with younger dentists 10 or 15 years ago as lenders, they were trying to like piece together all of their information. So they were asking everyone the same question. How do I develop a marketing strategy?
Yes.
What do I do with my open? What happens when I open my doors? Like, how do I get my doors to open? What equipment do I need? And it was like they were using all of these different people, and all the industry professionals, for the most part, were very good, but everyone has their own opinion. So now you've got 17 different opinions coming at you.
Yep.
And as a dentist, like you most likely didn't go to business school. You most likely don't have a marketing degree. You didn't like train for 2 years at ADEC. Like you're using this information, and then you really don't have the basis to make an informed decision because you're not informed yourself. That's what I love about your business, is that you've taken that problem and have kind of solved it. Now you've got this one place where all the information has been vetted, and you're really attributing that to your clients, which is great.
Yeah, it's avoiding those big mistakes, and I've got a combined tenure here on our team of like 450 years of experience. Like I've got 10-year people that came from different areas of industry, whether it's in floor planning, equipment, marketing, systems, protocols, demographics, real estate, funding, obviously, like all those areas are covered that are the big stages. But in between there's all these other elements. And yes, there were like, and think about the advancement of social media. Now we have another layer of like people that, well-intentioned people giving their opinions on what to do, buy a practice, start a practice, what to do, what not to do based upon their limited experience, sometimes their lack of experience in that space. So for associates today, there's so much great information that's out there, but how do you know if that information is proven? How do you know if those methodologies are proven? And if it's just somebody's one-time experience in a different time, in a different place that has no relevance to you or even the kinds of dentistry or patients that you actually want to see. So some of that information has to be really filtered down, and that's what we want to do, is help protect those associates to be able to launch a practice faster and become successful and profitable faster.
That's great. And, to get into kind of your story a little bit more, so when, obviously you were on the lending side at Bank of America, when did it happen for you that you were like, wait a minute, I have more to give, I have a lot more to offer than just the financing aspect? You were probably doing consulting, like just by the nature of, I know how you ran your business and I know how you work with clients. Like you were almost a consultant before you were a consultant, right? So how did that change happen for you? Yeah,
great question. Yeah, I think it was knowing where all the pieces were of a startup. I think there felt like, okay, there was like a product that I sold. There was like, you need a loan, but there was all these other ancillary pieces where the dentist and the clients that I was working with on the lending side were saying, hey, how do I do these other pieces? And it was, and that's where it came from, was like, okay, I'm already doing these elements. And then when Jamie and I partnered together, it was like, okay, he had another side. We're still very great friends and yin and yang. And it was a great yin and yang relationship of like, he had like the vision of like, here, what this business could look like. And my methodology was more like, okay, I know how to put the pieces together. I knew the construction, not the construction of like, like construction, but I knew the
throwing a hammer, but like you actually do the construction of how to build it out,
yes,
right?
The development of the system was like, okay, and you and I talked about this the other day. It's like, I needed to find who needed to be in that system and what are the right people that need to be in there. And that's how we built the company, was really finding the right people that said, I love doing that piece, I'm good at that piece, and having them live in their genius, and finding those people that were just excellent at that position. And it is really building the team over time, which has allowed us to grow, but also be able to grow at a rate that it doesn't feel like the clients are losing touch, because it's like, our business, we can grow and then add more people into that mix, and there's never a loss of touch.
That's interesting. And for the listeners today that maybe did a startup practice on their own, I would imagine that many of them felt like it was a very chaotic process. It does sound like the team at Ideal takes the chaos out of it and puts it into a very systemic program to make sure you're doing it along the steps the right way. Is that a fair assessment of how you guys go about the system?
There's a system, which we have our 13-stage system, which is step by step. So that's actually something that you can find on our website at idealpractices.com. You can see okay, here are the stages. The funny thing is that in between those 13 stages, there's stages. So if I tell people hey, here's the 59 stages of a startup, no one would ever want to do it. But 13 seems manageable. So it's from a marketing perspective. So there was the build of the system inside of there. But I also think to help reduce the chaos, but also there's the kind of the mental chaos that happens no matter what. As an associate, if you're listening, you will get to the end, there will be some of those freak out moments. I'll just say that's what happens. It's everything is kind of converging together, but it's also how do we help focus that dentist, our client, into we know these things. There are going to be elements that are here that are going to be challenging, whether it's permit times in today's environment, construction delays, waiting for a fire inspector for 7 weeks, true story, to check a box, all these things can happen. Okay, there are things, most dentists, as you're listening, you all are type A people. There's a control thing and type A personalities. And it's guys, we're going to get there. It's how do we get there properly? If that means this takes a month or two more, you're making a 2 to 3 decade decision. What's a couple months to get it done correctly and done right? So a lot of times we're not trying to eliminate chaos. Sometimes we can't eliminate it, but it's finding the solution to the chaos. That's the big thing. It's can we prevent all problems from happening? No, but we've seen it hundreds of times ago. We've seen that happen. We know how to create a solution to work around that, as opposed to oh my gosh, everything blows up. That's the main thing, is how do we find the solution when the bump in the road happens? It will happen. Every startup has a bump. But if you don't, consider yourself lucky. There will be a bump. It's how do we navigate and find the solution around the bump? That's the main thing that we're looking to guide our clients and to launch a practice, not just open a practice.
That's a great statement right there, launch versus open. And then the other thing I'm taking away from this is that, just because you're working with a consultant that has systems and you're not going to be able to stop issues from arising. It's just being able to get through those issues as best as possible. And the other part that you can't, listen, you're an associate moving from I work for someone to opening a business. You're going to be stressed. There's going to be stress.
Yes.
As a human being, I just went through this myself in March when I launched Wicklow. There are going to be moments where you're oh my God, what am I doing? Should I just go back to work for my employer? Should I just, I missed that paycheck every 2 weeks that was coming like clockwork. There are going to be those moments regardless. So no matter who you choose to help you, you still are a human being. You're going to have human emotions throughout this process. Yeah,
and it's going to be natural, but it's how do you channel that focus into taking action into areas that you can control, like things like making sure you have a good marketing strategy, ground marketing. You're responsible for bringing those first patients through the door. That's what our team always says, is you're responsible for those first 100 patients. What can you do to bring people through those doors from day one? And yes, challenges are going to arise. It's how do you navigate those? And if you've never done it before, listen, could I hang up tile in my kitchen? Sure. Guess what it's going to look like? It looks like I hung up tile in a kitchen. I don't have the right tools. I've never done it hundreds of times, but the tile in my kitchen looks beautiful because a guy that's been doing it for 30 years came in, had his machine, his helper, and the tile looks perfect and impeccable. I'd still be doing it 2 years later.
I'm happy that the sign behind me is great because I can't hang anything on a wall, let alone tile anything. So yeah,
I can hang pictures. I can hang pictures. I can hang some pictures.
I can't even do shelves. It's not going to happen in my house. I'm bringing somebody in for that. That's great. So tell me a little bit about, in your role for your organization, you're CEO of Ideal Practices. What does your role do for the business? How are you interacting with clients? And tell me a little bit about your organization and how you guys work.
What I love is I get to be able to help lead and guide one of the greatest teams that truly cares for the success of our practice owners and our future practice owners. My typical role is more on the front end from a marketing and messaging perspective, but my real role is how do I help help build the system, and B, really with our team, help them get to that next level of what they want to achieve as well. And I think as a business owner, I think even if you're in a dentist and you're going to become a practice owner, yes, the business relies upon you because you're the dentist. You have to deliver the dentistry. But you also need to think about, like, what is your team and how can you help your team achieve something more for themselves as well? Because if they're growing, then your business will naturally grow. And that's what's happened here is over time, our company has naturally grown simply because I don't have all the ideas. The team has most of the ideas of, like, how do we improve upon what we do? What are the systems we need? They see things on a daily basis. And so I get to interact with clients, whether it's at some of our events. We have a couple events per year, Startup Practice Blueprint. We do two-day events through our podcast, through other vendor relationships where I'm speaking and things like that. That's an interaction that I love to be able to interact. We also have some we have an accelerated growth program as well, that for clients that have stayed on board. So we've built a huge mastermind group that even is beyond our startup program, and I don't make public because it's a program that's beyond what we do. So I get to be able to not only talk with new prospective practice owners and understand what their vision is, but to be able to continue to, like, work with clients that have opened their doors, that are achieving great things in their communities, helping their own colleagues, because with our mastermind group, they get to help themselves and really have a great group. So that's what my daily life looks like.
Amazing. It's I've always known you to be a great leader of people, and you've always had a lot of information to share, and it's great to see you sharing it in the way that you do today. The word I want to focus on from before is launch. This isn't about, it seems what I'm learning today is this isn't about picking the right colors and picking the right equipment and picking the right space. It's truly about setting the business up for success. Yes, all of those things are fun. That's the fun part of doing a new business.
Right.
I get to pick my colors, I get to pick my equipment, I get to pick my technology, right? But you use the word launch because it truly is about when the door is open. So talk a little bit about what you guys do to make sure that launch happens for your clients.
Yeah, I would say I could sum it up in 3 words, and we call it the 3 Ps. We call it practice, profits, and purpose. That's the big thing. You got to have the practice, which is the physical element. And I think most dentists focus on, like, okay, I got my doors open, whether that's demographics, the right space, this beautiful office, and things like that. Yes, but you don't need me to get 4 walls and some chairs. Like, most people just focus on the opening of the practice. I think what you need to focus on is these next 2 layers, and next kind of imagine this as like you're walking up these steps, like profits. I'm not talking about like building the most profitable practice, but without profits, what's the point? And then it becomes, this is a hobby. At that point, if you're not focusing on profits. What I mean with profits is having to focus on building the right systems inside your practice, the protocols, truly having a business and really understanding what are the systems, what are the guidelines inside of the practice. Some get to this level of having a profitable practice where it launches. I think the big thing that separates our clients from other dental practices, whether it's corporate or others, is this element of purpose, where they can go in their communities, they can connect in the communities, whether it's something they give back to, they support, but ultimately, I find 99% of dentists are such giving people, and sometimes giving to a fault, where they give away too much dentistry sometimes.
Yeah.
But they're giving, and I feel like so many of our clients always about, like, I want to do this because I want to achieve something for myself, but also, like, how can I serve my community in a way that I have control and freedom on how I treat them, how I treat my team. And you got to have that. And then you can launch a practice. It's not just about like a cannon where like the cannonball kind of dribbles out. It's like, how do you launch it from day one? Because you have one shot to get a startup right, and it needs a launch from day one. You need to be able to have all these systems in place, have the right marketing strategies, because there's a psychological element, there's a financial element of, okay, I need patience and I need to be able to produce dentistry. There's a psychological element of those who said, I want to work for you because I want to be a part of this purpose, that they see coming through the door patience from day one, that you truly launch a practice, and it comes with a plan. I don't have tricks. I have a system that works, but it only works as well as the system that's followed. Just like if you go to the dentist and they say, okay, Bill, you want straight teeth, you want this, okay, these are the things that need to be done. Here's our plan for you to get there. Okay, well, if you don't follow it, you're not going to get the result. So the results are only equal to the greatest, like our greatest success stories are the greatest implementers. I have great strategies. If you don't implement, I can't guarantee what that success is going to look like. But launch, not just open, is the main key.
That's great. And it's you have to have, so it sounds like you have to have a willing participant in the client, right? The client has to be, this is active.
Committed.
Yeah, committed and active and engaged in the process, right?
Yes.
And then execute and don't let it fall off once the practice is open and you got the first 100 patients and everyone's going well, don't fall off. Now it's about, now you got to get to the next level and continuing to grow and build that brand and build that environment.
That's right. That's right.
Fantastic. That's great advice. What are there one or two pieces of advice you would give? Like, so I'm an associate dentist. I'm listening to this right now. What's some of the advice you would give someone who's having that spark just went off, right? They had a bad day at their associate job. They were like, this place is crazy. I can totally do this. I can totally do this. If that guy or that girl can do it, I can certainly do this. So that spark has gone off. Yep. What is some of the advice you would give them to make that spark turn into that flame, turn into the fire?
Yeah, I think it's, I'll even go back, but even before the spark even happens, because most of the time there's like a little bit happening. Think about this, like a startup takes on average 12 to 24 months, like let's call it in the middle, almost 18 months. So think about where you want to be 18 months from today. If you want to buy a practice, Bill, like you can't just say, okay, I want to buy a practice. Can I buy something in 30 days? Maybe not. You may be looking for 2 years. Like your startup may take 2 years if you're in an area where you're like, hey, there's heavy growth. I'm waiting for a building to be built. So you need to also kind of start to pre-plan, not just say one day, hey, I want to have this spark. I think it's once you have the spark, then it's like, okay, what are my first stages? And what I would never say is go find real estate and go get a loan. What you need to do is find like, where's a plan for me to be able to have a plan that I could follow? Who has a plan? Who are the people I need to have involved that can guide me with unbiased elements of my entire startup? It's really making sure, because most people just sprint out and say, I need to find real estate, I need money. Yep, very, very important. But what is your plan? What kind of patients do you want to see? How do you want to be known within your community? Like, do you like working with this kind of demographic or this kind of demographic? All these questions you need to start to answer to really understand, what kind of dentistry do I want to deliver within my community? Who do I want to see? And be able to find the right people that I could trust that can guide me in those elements, because you've never done it before.
I love that answer, because so many people I've talked to, industry people outside, how long does it take to open a dental practice? 6 to 9 months. No, that's not true. That might be how long it takes to the construction. That might be the construction period. But to actually open and launch a new business takes years, like 12, 20, 18, 24 months or more from that initial plan, actual coming to fruition through the launch. I'm using launch, by the way. I hope you didn't copyright that yet, because I'm using launch from now on.
No. I have plenty of other trademarks, but not that one yet. I'll trademark.
That's great. Any other advice you have to those associates that are having that idea? And do you find that, like, I'm seeing this from my business. Obviously, I work with sellers, and then those sellers, I'm looking for buyers. Yeah. I found that I'll sometimes meet a dentist that I can tell right away, you're never going to find a practice to buy, because you're so laser focused on what you want, and you're not willing to give some of that up, which I appreciate. But I can usually tell within the first half hour, like, and it's not because they want to be everywhere. Like, that's a different problem. It's really about, I want this, I want to be here, I want to be this type of practice. It sounds like those are the people that have kind of already had that planning conversation with themselves. Are you finding that most of your clients have kind of looked for a practice? They kind of start there, they look to buy something, and then they realize, I'm never going to find something that's perfect for me to buy?
70, it could be 70% or greater. Probably have look for a practice. And again, I think both paths are great. You know me, like I'm never going to sell against an acquisition. I think you got to find the right acquisition in the right marketplace, but there's only one buyer for one practice. It's like a home. It's like not every home is the perfect home for everybody. It's like, what can you live without within that home, and what things can you do? Same thing with a practice. So I think with an acquisition, it's like, understand what you really want. And I've had a number of clients, even recently, I think about like conversations on what we call our vision call, which is that first big call when they come on board. I've had a few to go, I know what I wanted, so I knew I couldn't buy a practice. I do have that, but it's probably 25% of our clients, as opposed to probably the other 70% have probably gone through saying, I want to be a practice owner. I'm going to explore both options. 100% do that. Absolutely. Definitely go down that path. You said like, hey, what are some of the things I would give? I would say this kind of advice, which would be, number one is don't just focus on if you're doing a startup, don't just focus on saving strategies, focus on growth strategies. In other words, I think so many people like, okay, I can save myself to success. Yes, there are ways to save money on whether it's equipment or bundling this with that and all these different elements. But I think somebody focus on like, I'm going to build the cheapest startup. And like, listen, you can hire a bad attorney who says, I'm going to give you a great deal, and find yourself with a bad lease that you signed because you found a cheap attorney. You can find cheap equipment and it could break. So if you want to be the cheap dentist on the corner, build a cheap startup. But you can't just focus on saving strategies. You need to say, how can I grow my practice? And I see posts like this sometimes on Facebook groups where it's like, hey everybody, I'm getting ready to open my practice in 2 or 3 weeks. What's everybody doing for marketing? Well, that's a conversation 6 months ago that you should have been asking, that you should have been, having a plan for. And they get to the end and go, oh yeah, by the way, I need to get patients through the door. And they think marketing sounds expensive. Okay. Do you want to save money or do you want to make more? You can't have both. So you need to focus on the growth, not just how do I build the cheapest startup, thinking if I save $30,000, I'll be more successful. I would say put that $30,000 to work someplace if it's a choice.
Great. Yeah, it's don't spend frivolously, but spend on things that are going to make you money, and don't cut corners, because honestly, in most cases, when you cut a corner, that's a corner you will have to keep going back to and back to and back to fix, to replace, because that $50 or $5,000 that you saved ends up costing you tens of thousands in revenue or tens of thousands in fixing it.
Yeah, I've seen a number of clients. I've had a few clients even I hear about, like, they've sold their practices for huge multiples and things like that. And if you pulled them today and brought them in here, I'd say, cool. Was it because you saved money on your startup, or is it because you grew your startup to a huge point of profitability? You can't point it and say, I sold my practice for $10 million because I saved $50,000 in my startup. No, you grew your practice and you launched a practice. That's why you were in the likely situation that you could sell for a huge multiple.
Great, that's great. I love the Ideal Practices story. I really enjoy what you guys do for clients. It really is a service, and it's funny. Like when I told one of my friendly competitors that I was having you on. They're like, why are you having a startup consultant on? I'm like, because they're creating inventory for down the road. They're creating inventory for us to sell later. But more importantly, a healthy industry has both paths, right? 100%. The fact that there's a path for someone to have an idea to start a business and go get $1 million and go build that out and go launch a practice from scratch is so unique, and sometimes I feel like a lot of us lose sight of that. Like, this is an industry that performs extremely well. The banks are ready to lend to you as an associate dentist. That's not the case in many other industries. So the fact that someone can actually go do this and this path is still available is fantastic. And of course, I love the acquisition path as well. So having both available to enter ownership, I think, is great, and it's one of the reasons why I love being in healthcare.
Yeah, and same on my end too. I like to be able to talk. Like, can I talk acquisitions? Sure, but like that's not my expertise. But I think both need to be explored so that, because I think, and thank you, Bill, because I think so many people that are in your space and a lot of times have been at it for a long time are like anti-startup. Like, you should only buy because you can get revenue. There's always it's always the sales thing for an acquisition is like revenue. Okay, cool. But some people can build the revenue. I think it's great that you have that open perspective to say, wait a minute, like you have so many practices that are for sale. Not everybody can buy them because they can't do it. They don't know about it. They don't get there fast enough. Like there's only one buyer for a practice. Are you that one buyer? And if not, what is your next plan? And I think there's a lot of great opportunities that don't have to be in rural America for people to launch successful startups with a plan and be really successful, and then have something that they can then in the future sell to be able to transition out, to have a legacy maybe for their family, maybe their kids become dentists. Like that's what this is about, is like there isn't one single path that is better. It's finding the right path for the individual doctor to say, I know which path that I need to choose. Great. Now find the right people that can help you get there. That's
awesome. So we always end our discussions, and this has been a great one. I could talk to you for hours. But we always end our discussions for new listeners that haven't been here before. The name Wicklow, the name of my company, was derived from I was looking for a marketing plan, a storyline for my business, and Wicklow is a place in Ireland that I aspire to live in and have a place in and take my family there if I ever get to retirement age. And with the I have a 1-year-old.
What's retirement?
So it's going to be a very long.
What's retirement?
From there, that's exactly right. But if I ever do retire, I'd love to have a place in Wicklow, Ireland. So when I was developing the name and the brand story, the storyline for the business, I realized I was helping clients exit and most likely enter into their retirement or help them fund their retirement for when they are ready. So Wicklow keeps that in the forefront of the interactions that I have with my clients. So I always ask our guests, what is your Wicklow?
What is my Wicklow? Well, I was thinking about this. So your Wicklow is so appropriate because it's like transition and fund retirement. Well, okay, should mine be like continuing to start up more companies? Like, did I just do startups forever?
Sure.
My Wicklow is this. I have 3 daughters, so you know this. I have you beat. I want to support my 3 daughters, obviously my wife. I want to make sure that they have a great life. I also want to make sure they get off my payroll. Maybe I get on their payroll. That would be great. And all I want is, I just want a boat slip out in back of my house. My wife knows this. Smaller home, near the water. Maybe not great because I just went through a couple of hurricanes here in Florida. But I still want, I want the old Florida, rancher, it's a 1-story thing. I want an old Golden Girls house with my boat slip out in the back. That's it. Pretty simple.
Fantastic. Listen, sometimes simplicity is the best way to retire and enjoy yourself. That's great.
That's right.
Well, listen, Stephen, it has been a fantastic discussion. That went fast. But I wanted to just say, to our listeners today, Ideal Practices, I have watched this company grow. When I was a lender before, and obviously I'm friendly with Stephen. I knew Jamie from back in the day. But to watch what you guys are doing and the help that you're providing your clients has been great. It was so great to have you on. And for those that aren't watching the video, could you just I know you gave your website earlier, can you give your website and an email address so people that do want to reach out can contact you and get in touch with Ideal Practices?
Yeah, so the best way to get a hold of us is idealpractices.com. And I would say, hey, if you want to pick up a copy of my book, The Startup Dentist, you can go to thestartupdentistbook.com. This is our 13-stage process, unfoiled. If you want to get more information, this is your best step. Before you start looking at real estate, before you even start talking about funding, pick up a copy of my book. You can get it for free. All I ask is that you pay for my printing cost for this. And this book will give you such great information. It'll be a great next step. So startupdentistbook.com and then idealpractices.com.
Stephen Trutter, CEO and published author. I'll have to get there one day. Listen, it was great having you on, Stephen. Thank you so much for everything you do. And anyone that has having that associate spark and wants to be an owner, Ideal Practices is a great company to partner with and work with. And we wish you best of luck. Thanks, Stephen, for coming on today.
Thanks, Bill. Thanks.
See ya.
Every time we speak, it's no apologies. This is Wicklow Healthcare Advisory, presenting industry insiders, brought by Bill Murray. He help you in a real hurry. From ownership to healthcare, he an advocate. Teaching you how to buy and sell practices. From CPAs to attorneys, all guests. Here to help you with your goals. You never know who's on next. This is Wicklow Healthcare Advisory.